Good afternoon and welcome to what will be a very interesting fireside chat. For the first time in our series of fireside chats, we've got an owner. We thought it was time to talk about owner issues. Obviously, there's been a lot of different conversations and challenges that the ownerships have faced during the pandemic. And we thought it'll be time to hear from somebody who has been a long-standing owner, a developer, a person who owns almost 3,000 rooms, or a family really that owns almost 3,000 rooms in India, and another 400 rooms in Kathmandu. So, and they've got projects going on. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Arun Saraf, Managing Director of Juniper Hotels, to please join me on screen. While Arun does that, I just quickly go through some housekeeping issues. Everybody will be on mute during the webinar, during this chat. The idea is that we can have a chat that is not interrupted from outside. Your questions are always welcome, and you're welcome to post your questions at the places that are mentioned, please, or indicated on screen. Please do that. We'll track those questions, and I will be fed those questions by WhatsApp, and I will try and weave them into the conversation. Arun, would you like to please put on your camera and your audio and join me, please? There you are. Good afternoon and welcome to this chat.
Thank you.
As I said, you are the owner, or the family is the owner of almost 3,000 rooms in India, and the largest owner of Hyatt hotels in India, and probably among many countries, because you've also got a Hyatt Regency in Kathmandu, and you've got a very good privately branded Yak and Yeti hotel also in Kathmandu. So, Arun, tell me, what led you into hoteliering?
What brought me into hotels? Actually, Vijay, this is a kind of a difficult question because my father had built his first 2 hotels when I graduated from university in US and came back to India in 1982. So he had the Yak and Yeti hotel in Kathmandu, which he completed and opened in 1977. Almost, you can imagine, 45 years back. And then he had already commissioned and started building the first Hyatt in Delhi for the Asian Games in New Delhi, the Hyatt Regency Delhi at Bikaji Kama Place. So he built these 2 properties. He already had 2 properties when I came and joined him in business. There were other businesses that were around in the family, but he said that you should go to Kathmandu, and because we are basically an NRI family. So I came to Kathmandu and stayed to look after Yak and Yeti, and I was there for almost 10 years before I moved to Delhi. So my journey into hoteliering was because it's a family business actually. We are 2nd generation. My son is now 3rd generation. My brother, his son. So we are now concentrating on hotels, ownership of hotels, development of hotels.
How much of it is business and how much of it is emotion, or has the emotion grown with the business?
Well, I would like to say it is purely business, but in families like ours, it is very easy to confuse that there is a bit of certainly there is quite a bit of emotional attachment, if I may use the word, but still continues. The underlying whole thing is that the businesses have to be profitable for us to continue to grow in this business. And we have steadily grown without any aggressive approach, 1 hotel at a time. Once in 1 year, we were developing at one time. For 6 years, we opened 1 hotel every year. And after we opened in 2017, after that, I have not opened any more hotel. And
but now there is. Sorry, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
We have 1 hotel in the pipeline now, which is the Hyatt in Bodh Gaya. It's going to be a Hyatt Place in Bodh Gaya, which was supposed to open last year. Because of pandemic, we delayed it.
Yes, yes, that's going to be a nice hotel as well. But you know, there is nothing wrong in having a bit of emotion as part of the decision making and ownership of hotels, because then that actually can drive a little bit of quality. It can also drive a little bit of risk taking, which is not sort of killing business. It's not averse to normal business policies and principles, but that little bit of emotion, I think, is necessary, particularly when you're at that higher level of hotels that you are, you know, the premium hotels or the upper upscale hotels that you are building. So I certainly don't think there's anything wrong in emotion there. But tell me, have you had to change or fine tune your objectives as you have gone about over the last 40 years? Or have the objectives remained pretty much the same?
No, objectives can never be the same. They have to keep on evolving with times and keep changing. Before I come to that point, emotion and passion. I'm a passionate hotelier, but I would not call myself a very emotional hotelier.
Good point.
Going back to the question about has it changed? Yes, it has changed, and it keeps changing. It doesn't change every week, but surely earlier in the times when we were growing, the first hotels were coming up. At that time, the opportunities were very few in terms of development. Up to 2005, 2006, which was very, very slow pace. When the international hotel companies could do the management, there was almost an explosion. So earlier, if I recall, in 90s, I and my brother Umesh and my father would sit and chat, and we would say, just throw a stone anywhere in the country and you can build a hotel, literally in every city. I mean, I won't say countryside, but you could build a hotel in any location and you still succeed. But then after 2005, when supplies really started coming in, we had to become choosy, and every decision had to be made very, very calibrated one, but still it was good. Post 2010, there was a huge supply that was already coming in the market right tomorrow. And that's when the hotel industry, which was the supplies were coming in at almost like a flood, and the demand growth was less. So I was also calibrating. This was something that we could not lose in eyesight. That's why we never went and built hotels everywhere. We chose our hotels, the locations, the cities, and the location within the city. I'm proud to say all my hotels, I mean, they are in AAA location. I'm not interested in putting hotel in every nook and corner of this country. I'm interested in making profitable.
Sure.
I have 3 hotels in Delhi and Mumbai rather than one in Guwahati.
Yeah. So yeah, it's different approaches to it in terms of you got scale. You've always gone for scale. You know, you had then the biggest hotel in Bombay when Grand Hyatt was planned. Actually, the biggest hotel in India at that point with the apartments. And you actually brought in the concept of service departments into the projects in India. So yeah, that's very, very good. Let's switch a little bit and talk about what most people would sort of want to hear about. It's the dreaded pandemic. Uh, how has the pandemic impacted you, and how do you see the future? I know it's a broad question, and answer it in, take your time to answer different aspects of it if you want.
See, pandemic was unexpected and it came unannounced.
If you say you expected it, then you'd be in trouble, Arun.
Exactly, I agree with you. Certainly, I would never say that, but it arrived unexpected. We were hoping and expecting 2020 to be a glorious year. 2019 was showing all the signs of a good, strong rebound in hoteliering. I won't say tourism, but certainly in hoteliering. There was a good demand coming from MICE. International demands were good. Leisure was also looking up, and so we were expecting a good year. And by February end, we knew something was already going wrong. And by March, mid-March and the end of March, we knew it was all shut down. So this actually taught us personally, for me and for my group, a big lesson. we were very complacent in terms of reacting and managing our businesses before the pandemic. For us in pandemic, quickly, very, very quickly, within 1 week, we had plans to scale down our costs to almost like 25% or even lower than what they were before that. Our operator was aghast at our extreme steps that we were willing and we were going to take. But then when we reasoned it out, they were very much aligned with us. And fortunate to say, in light of what an international company being slow, Hyatt was very, very quickly and accept our proposals and came with deeper cuts. And we sustained the
Sorry, Arun, you might want to be a little closer to your speaker. You're a little faint sometimes.
Sure.
Thank you.
Am I good now?
Much better, yes.
Thank you. So it was a kind of a situation where we all were discovering and realizing that the things of pandemic is not going to be temporary for 2 weeks or 1 month, that it was going to long haul. We were able to cut down our manpower cost, heat light power cost, and all the other frills that we were able to cut down. Actually, I shut down 4 of my 12 hotels. Actually, 5 of the 12 hotels were in month of, by April, mid first week of April, they were shut. The 2 Kathmandu properties were shut, blank, zero. And Lucknow was also shut down, Ahmedabad was also shut, Raipur was shut. So these 5 properties were all gone. Mumbai and Delhi, we were expecting some other kind of businesses to start showing up, which was because there were already negotiations started on this front. But overall, it was just cost management and taking aggressive steps.
And do you see some of that carrying forward once the sort of normalcy returns, whenever it does? Or do you see that those lessons will sort of, dilute, will go away, or those opportunities, because of, sometimes what happens is what you can do in a difficult time, you can't continue in a good time. How do you see that sort of future of those measures?
Yeah, Vijay, actually, this pandemic has been great learning, not only for us, but the whole hotel industry. We all have realized that there was quite a bit of waste in the way we were running our business. We were almost getting complacent, and we were complacent actually in managing our costs because we were only focused on top line and costs, especially for the managed and operated companies, operated hotels, they were kind of secondary. So if you look at it, the biggest learning has been in management. I'll give you certain examples. I would say that almost all of our hotels, we have a manning levels now. Going forward, planned for 2022 and 23, at almost like 60% of what it used to be before. At present, we are operating at less than 50% of manning. And these are manning, because there are many different levels. There are permanent manning, there is a casual manning, there is contractual, there is outsourced. So we have actually been able to very successfully bring down our manning cost to almost 50% of what it used to be. Even manning on the executive side was quite a bit of waste was there. People were under-deployed. And we were almost like being pushed by our managers and operators to retain the manning level that we had because they did not have the courage to actually see if it could be done better by less. Now they have been forced to recognize this. I have been forced to recognize it. And I think almost all my colleague hotelier owners, everybody now see that there is definitely a merit in rationalization of. We were already being beyond 20% of our revenue, and it has to come back to 15% of it. Some hotels were operating at 25%. So that was one big learning. Second is efficiencies in terms of heat light power. If you can manage these 2 cost structures, I think we are fine. Everything else is variable. These are 2
So yeah,
ones.
HLB and payroll are 2 really big costs that come out of operations. Of course, debt service is is more an owner cost in that sense. But I'm glad you've been able to put this together, and you've been able to work with the operator without sort of a tug of war, if you want to call it that, to put that in place. Your hotels have a sizable banqueting component, large banqueting component, sizable F&B component to your business. At least, let's say your hotel in your Grand Hyatt, your Andaz, and maybe a couple others. How do you see the future for that business? Do you see the functions, weddings, MICE business coming back soon, or do you see that struggling?
See, MICE social functions are back. They are back already. People, by socials, I mean weddings, parties, gatherings, which are not related to a specific business, but they are more of and they are already back. What is not back yet is the scale and size. So I only see that in a short time, when we are able to have total vaccination, I do see the MICE business also coming back with quite a good, strong coming back. I do not see this business disappearing. We will learn to do this because we as humans, we are very much, if I may use the word, social people. We need to connect as many meetings as you can have on Zoom, but when you are discovering new people and when you are trying to network with your colleagues in your business, you need to do it more face to face. So I do see that MICE is going to be back in 2023 to the fullest extent that we have seen in 2019. No question about it. Okay. Social come back fast. I would say that by this season, if you see in December, you will see that the weddings are in full swing. Maybe the size of 1,000 people wedding may swing down to 500, but it's already back. So I have no.
People are willing to spend for the size, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. They always are willing to spend. There is enough budget and money. It's only how we make them spend. Corporates have big budget, much money. We have to find innovative ways for them to spend the money in our properties.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the innovativeness that comes in. That you bring in new themes or new approaches to it, and that's sort of the skill. What about the restaurants?
Same thing with restaurants. Restaurant business is not. I do not see the fear of pandemic or the after effects of pandemic. I would see that people now have discovered that they have many more options than just going to hotels. So freestanding restaurants in the neighborhoods will start making much faster comeback than the restaurants in hotels. I see the delivery services that have been happening now would continue, and you have quality delivery service also. So that will become a very important part of eating out. I would say that it may not erode into totally eating out because I think they would be cooking less in their homes. That's how I feel will happen on the eating outside of it. But restaurants, for the hotel business restaurants, our business is going to certainly shrink. It's not going to, unless we have an offering which is so strong and so unique that at the end of the day, hotel living, the general managers and most of the people are more attuned to doing more business on the room side of it, which are more profitable for a hotel asset than F&B. So they will not concentrate as much. This is how I feel. And I would, now building new hotels, I would not build more than 2 restaurants for sure, maybe 1. Stay with your room business.
But those who have got the restaurants and those who are concentrating on it, and I agree with you that there are times when people do not, the restaurant is an adjunct, it's not a main business. But those who are concentrating on it have been able to sort of exploit them reasonably well. So I agree with you that today there is a tendency to reduce the number of offerings, but may not be entirely a totally limited offering like just 1 restaurant. Of course, depending on the size of the hotel, or it's a very large restaurant. But that's something that I believe is going to evolve yet. It's not, we haven't seen the last of it. It might be with the flow for a time, but we've not seen the last of it. Do you see any need, or let's say, how have you looked at it from the point of view of your philosophy towards investment for the future? I mean, your expectations out of investments in the future. How would you approach investments in the future?
It's an interesting question. End of the day, investment is should be decided on a return that you can make. And the return, as earlier we were saying, the returns were coming in wherever we were putting hotels. Now, any investment should assure at least a return of 15% plus, especially on a real estate business that we take the kind of risks that we take. And the capital intensive nature of our business is making us rethink that the borrowing, the people who had huge borrowing were not able to sustain this pandemic blow, whereas the companies which were decently leveraged or under leveraged or not leveraged, they have come out of this whole affair quite, I mean, unscratched, if I may use the word. So going forward, I am very, very cautious of borrowings. I rather do business as much as I'm able to do financing on the equity side of it rather than have the lendings, I mean, the borrowing from a bank. So that is one caution that I'm exercising myself, and I would caution, and I would see that small hoteliers who had plots of land and they build one hotel each, I would see that that is going to decline severely. Okay? They are not going to be as adventurous as they were in the past.
Why is that?
Because you have to rely a lot more on borrowing on those kind of things, where you have a land parcel and you don't have that land cost and you value the land and then you go to a bank and borrow. Actually, borrowing becomes disproportionately large, although it doesn't look that much on the paper, but in terms of the carry on the asset, it can be very large. So I see that there is going to be a decline on it. I myself am not going to be jumping on a plane and then trying to get a lender to lend me money. I'd rather be more prudent on that. So there is going to be a more consolidation I see in the hotel sector, which was not happening before. I would see people go on.
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
I would see people actually willing to sell their assets rather than to drag them on with the lending situations that they have found themselves in. So a lot more transactions. Price corrections have not been.
Yes, that's the question. You know, there is the secondary market in India is typically quite shallow, and one of the reasons is the fact that valuation expectations are very, the gap on valuation expectations is very large. How do you see that correcting? Or do you see it correcting at all?
Yes, I do see it correcting. Because if there is a lender involved, the lenders are becoming much more aggressive. And they are willing to come forward and take a company to NCLT or whatever. I mean, there is some very, very prime examples that have happened in our vicinity, in sense of where people close to us, we have seen them really suffer because of the borrowing, and not the banks were very, very, if I use the word, trigger happy to pull the plug. So I see that this has happened a lot more, and bankers have also choices, and the litigation that earlier used to follow after the bankers pulled the plug has minimized now. So you would see that the developers or the owners would be more willing to make deals, even with a haircut. Earlier, what was happening was I put 100 crore rupees in this asset. I have a bank loan of 200 and I have a interest capitalized of 50, so I want 350. And I want my 100 crores also, it has been invested for 6 years. I want a 10% return on it. So nothing will happen on it. And
Sure.
Still many deals are stuck there. But I think this has to come.
Yeah, I mean, it has to settle because, actually what I find is that sometimes the ownerships drag the transaction to a point where as you said, the banker gets trigger happy and then sells it at any price that just covers themselves or themselves minus the acceptable haircut, and there is nothing left for the original investor. So sometimes by delaying it beyond a point, you actually hurt yourself. And you think there's going to be a fair number of distressed assets and potential appetite to acquire distressed assets.
I don't know about the appetite to acquire this, your assets like this, but certainly there will be a lot of assets will come in the market. I see more of international funds and people collaborating with them to see a bit more action there, and where I almost can see that all the Blackstones and the likes would be quite happy to acquire some of these assets, conglomerate them into a bucket or a basket, and then more the likes of, SAMI or some of the other groups that have emerged quite strongly, nicely. So that kind of stuff will happen. I don't see that a new owner will be stepping into an old owner's shoes much more. I can see large hotel companies buying assets. We are out in the market to look for assets. We are looking for assets, talking to assets, but I don't find the right valuations yet.
That's true. But tell me, what happens when you buy an asset and you've got an operator sitting on that asset who is different from Hyatt, and you've been working a lot with Hyatt? How would you deal with that situation?
See, I don't see a problem. If there is an asset and has an operator, and if the operator has successfully operated that property, and he is in no reason for the asset's failure for the old owner, the earlier owner, then there is no reason why you should disturb that. But if they are distressed assets, most of the time the assets are freed of the option. Because if it is an asset sale as it is as a going concern, then obviously the operator comes back. But if it is an asset sale on a basis of SURFACE action or NCLT action, then all the creditors, lenders, everybody has to everybody has to set aside, and then the banks just do whatever they have to do. So in that case, then you have an open choice to decide who is going to be the operator. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not really looking for Hyatt or non-Hyatt or any specific operator. I like to see the match, and if I see everybody is equal, then my preference obviously is Hyatt. For a very simple reason. If I have 10 hotels, I'm building the brand Hyatt. I'm helping Hyatt to build the brand. Why wouldn't I benefit from it? So it's a very, it's a simple that we have invested so much over the last 35 years in the brand.
Sure.
Why would I walk away from it?
Sure.
But I'm not hard on any operator. They are all, a couple of them are very, very good operators. They are committed to India. And I do not want to name names, but we all know them. And
sure.
They are long haul in India. So their good stuff is out there.
Yes, I think you make a good point that you've got a good operator relationship. You've got, with a very well reputed brand, and you're invested in that. So why sort of go away from that? Absolutely. You've always gone into the large size hotels, mainly in the upper upscale space, maybe the premium space. Would you look at the lower sectors, the upscale, the mid-scale, economy even? Is that something that attracts you, or is it something that you'd rather not play with?
Vijay, it's all commercial. It's not really that I don't want to be in small hotels or big hotels. When the numbers add up and stack up, it starts looking that you are safer and you are better off being in large cities with big hotels. That's my business. Okay, I cannot say that a 100-room hotel is non-performer or is a bad one. But the effort that required to run that 100-room hotel is not much different than effort required to run a 250-room. So the energies that I would rather be spending on, even in development, On all aspects of it, it comes to me that it becomes my business model has been to take large hotels. I tried with smaller. It's not that we do have 2-3 smaller hotels. Both there is going to be 120 rooms. Our Raipur property is 120 rooms again. We have a property in Hampi which is 126 rooms. So they're all around 100. Our Yakineti hotel, when my father built it, was 110 rooms hotel in 1977. When I came and sat there, I said, my God, 100 rooms, this is huge. But as times have moved on, the scales have again moved on too. And I'm for profitable hotels. I mean, for the time spent and money spent. Is time also is a lot valuable asset. So I'm open, but my concentration has been because I find them more profitable.
Sure, and you know that scale. Sometimes people walk away from scale because of the large size of the investment, but certainly that scale has got a lot of value. And once you're used to understanding that scale, it becomes much easier to work with that, and actually difficult to move away from that. I can well see that, and therefore you really would not want to go into lower scale hotels. Of course, sometimes you might see a large, like I mean, the Ibis at Aerocity is 400 rooms, or there's two Ginger projects that I'm aware of, 300 plus rooms at Bangalore and almost 300 rooms at Bombay. So you've got, sometimes you can have large size and scale there as well, but or some of the Lemon Tree properties are large. But I guess your message is that you'd rather play in the upper tier space.
Larger developments, Vijay. Okay. I wouldn't mind a 350 room, 400 room Ibis at Mumbai Airport here, outside the Mumbai Airport.
Okay.
Like Delhi University, I think is probably one of the most strongest future properties. The conglomerate of Aerocity is going to be rocking. It rocks even now.
That hotel has done well, yes. Coming back to owner-operator relationships, we talked about it in the context of the pandemic. And maybe lessons coming out of that, maybe lessons coming out of your previous dealings, and not just your dealings with your operator, but what you've gathered from the industry. So give me an answer which is more broad-based as best as you can. What are the points of reset that would help to make that relationship more fruitful?
Let me answer this question differently. Okay, what I mean by that, I will not go on the learning on pandemic itself, but the learning. What has happened is most of the good operators have become very, very large. Even a decent operator in India is having 50 properties. The people like Marriott's and some of them are almost 100 plus.
Much more than 100.
Yes, so you are looking at operators having a scale and size which has become so large that the amount of energy or attention that they can give to a single hotel is only what the GM can. And end of the GM and the day, the GM is also your employee. So they can send you policy, procedures, and booking engines and booking platforms. And that booking platform itself is being compromised by the third party booking OTAs and stuff like that. So you really, hotel management companies have to re-examine. Even the need of branding itself has become questioned now. Because I would rather be an Expedia hotel or a booking.com hotel rather than a Hyatt or a Marriott or an Accor hotel for that matter. So you have this technology is changing up the whole situation. Earlier, we used to have, let's say, let's start with Intercontinental or some of these guys. They had 40 hotels, 50 hotels, Hyatt at 50 hotels, 100 hotels. Marriott is now, I don't even know how much, but it must be 5,000 plus hotels. So you are sitting in a situation where the hotel operating companies have become branding companies rather than operating companies or managing companies. So my word and my learning for myself has been owner has to be stepping. Cannot be an absentee owner. And to step in there, sorry, my battery is going to be a big challenge. Excuse me for a minute.
Sure.
Thanks, I'm back.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I realized it was running down. Okay, so we have a kind of a situation where the operator's prime responsibility of the operating the hotel is getting compromised by his scale and size. Owners need to be more alert and aware of their properties, and they cannot be saying that the operator, I mean, you have to have a dialogue. I have a very open and very fair dialogue with my operator. They listen to us, I listen to them. And that same way, I would recommend most of the owners should have a much more deeper dialogue of this. If you are a bank or an insurance company and you own an asset, it doesn't matter. But most of us in India are owners who are, it's our personal assets. So my advice to all the people is that, guys, get involved. Don't be passive. They may not agree with you, you may not agree with them, but there's always going to be a solution and you will come around. But cannot think that the operator is looking at your property. They have 100 other properties.
That's a very important point you make, and the fact that I look at that in two ways. One, the fact that you have to be an active asset manager as an owner. But you also make the point, I think, that it doesn't have to be adversarial. You can have positive dialogues, come out with solutions rather than having a lot of angst. The angst probably builds up when you don't talk with the right spirit. Would I be right in concluding that?
Oh, absolutely. That is the crux of the whole matter. I'm sure. Because the operator, you are the biggest customer for them. If they don't have hotels, what will they will operate? How will they serve the customers who walk into those properties? So we are, their customer number one. Don't treat yourself as customer number last. Sure. Sometimes the operators start thinking that the guest is number one, employee is number three, and number two, everybody else is number three, and owner is number four. Leave that off.
That's the pecking order in the payment of monthly cash flows. No, the owner gets the payment last. But that's the different ownership aspect. But tell me, does that mean? Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
That pecking order is because you are the one who is the real ultimate owner.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are the one who's got to provide the cash flow. And a lot of times when you do contract negotiations and particularly, as you said, when it's the first time owner or one-off owners, the fact that they have to still be responsible for that working capital is something that is not easy for them to digest. But tell me, does that mean that franchising should be a bigger play? And would you be looking at franchising?
Oh, absolutely. Franchising is the way forward. There's no question. Only problem is that first-time owners don't have the skill to operate and manage it. So for them, I would still recommend that they should go for a management contract and learn the difference.
But you as a large owner would be happy to look at franchising, and you think that that's for a large experienced group or a large experienced owner, that should be the way forward, or that could be the way forward in the future. I won't say should, but could be the way forward.
I think I would say yes, it could be a way forward. It should be. In my own particular views, I was always classified myself as a developer owner. So we did not want to diversify our resources into managing or branding the property, like some of our other hoteliers did. We stayed with our development role and ownership.
Okay. Okay. You're not present in the leisure sector. Where would you look at? I mean, do you see that as an opportunity, and how would you want to pursue that?
It's certainly an opportunity. Our Saraf's hotel beginnings were in leisure segment. Kathmandu was a very much leisure destination in 1977, and still continues to be predominantly leisure. So we have two
India.
hotels.
Let's talk of India. Sorry, I should correct my question for India. And I know
India
you've got an asset in Hampi, and you'll have something in Bodh Gaya. But what about leisure in India, which is booming?
No, it is proving because I let go of leisure at one time because the scale and size. And we were busy developing like Andaz. Andaz is almost 1,000 base hotel, 1.1 million square feet developed, same as Grand Hyatt Mumbai. So we were more focused on big hotels and big cities. And at one time, I was almost frowning upon the leisure side of it because they were very, very seasonal, unpredictable, the rates were low. Now you see that the leisure has boomed. And there is another reason, guys. I mean, we have to see that there was almost a huge amount of leisure travelers stepping out of India, sitting on a plane to Thailand, to Dubai, to Europe, to all the places in the world, Singapore, Malaysia. India is now number one in their top 5 markets for them. So all these guys who are going all over the place have discovered Indian leisure. And I think Indian leisure has a run. But it is not something that it's still, the jury is still out. But once the international travel opens up, how much of this travel is going to resume going abroad, or how much will stay in India? So if you ask me the question about leisure versus business, I think leisure is definitely a very, very good opportunity, better opportunity than city centers, I would say yes, because Indians have more money now. Our local domestic travel is becoming big, disposable income is big, and the options available are limited, at least in quality segment of it. Otherwise, it's there, but in quality segment. So leisure definitely is a space there, but you have to take it with a pinch of salt how it's going to pan out post-pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, no doubt that there will be some correction in the absolute quantum of leisure demand, or the sort of the high pressure on leisure demand today once international destinations open up. But interestingly, there have been a few new destinations that have been opened up in the last 2 years with some nice quality properties. And I think that is starting to add depth to the market in India. And there could be other destinations that could add that depth. And I personally think that there is a lot of opportunity that could come through that widening of offerings.
I would agree with you. Vijay, I certainly agree with you. And I think this is something that needs closer examination. At one time, I was very keen to develop a large development, almost like 50, 60 acres, almost 2 hours away from any of the metro airports, where we could have almost like 5, 6 hotels, large convention, family-oriented spaces. These opportunities are galore. You just have to be entrepreneurial on this one.
Yeah, and you've got to prioritize that. Now, I'm going to ask you a question from the floor. What will be the 3 innovations to be used by the hospitality industry in the next 3 years?
Number one, innovation. I would not say a specific innovation. The hospitality industry has to learn to start leveraging IT and AI and all this newer digital technology much, much more. Okay, for it to evolve into, otherwise we will see a lot of other fields taking over our businesses. So we need to really adopt on that kind of technology that is already available for us. How you would leverage it is something that's still out. If I knew it, I would be doing it tomorrow. Can you repeat the question? I just lost track of it, please.
So what are the three innovations that the hospitality industry would need to pursue or could pursue in the next 3 years? So one is technology, as you said, more technology, more artificial innovation, artificial intelligence, sorry. What are the other, I mean, any others that you would sort of come as top of the mind?
Not really. Actually, end of the day, we are people industry, and our game is to please people by serving them in whichever format we are serving them. Food and beverage still need to be there. So I mean, we cannot become cloud kitchens, guys. I mean, that's a different business. If we don't have our own restaurant business, we may supplement ourselves by being a cloud kitchen for some other vendor, let me say. But end of the day, then you are not really evolving, but you are compromising. Evolving would be to how to make my own restaurants and my own event spaces more productive and much more oriented. Customer service, this is not something that new innovation is there or anything like that. And in terms of hygiene and all that, that is, given. It is not something that I would say is new. I mean, we are always required to do that. So I'm
and
not
you can
able
only
to,
enhance that, but you're required to do that. Yeah.
but I don't want to become a cloud kitchen. I mean, I still want to be a restaurant.
Yes, and you've got some good restaurants. Yeah, you've got some good restaurants. So Hyatt is reputed with restaurants, with F&B. You're a family office. How do you go about dealing with strategy, with new investment plans, monetization? How do you bring in the next generation even? So give us an insight into how a family office works.
Sure. Every family has its own culture. They have their own set of rules and own set of traditions, which must be honored and must be followed, because they are the unwritten convention of every family, the tradition. So you have 3 generations, 2 generations, and evolution in different generations has not been something new for our generation. It has always been there. But if you ask me about my own personal experiences on this, my father has been the boss and continues to be the boss of the business. He is chairman, he's 91 years of age, and he is still the chairman of all our hotel companies. And yesterday we had a AGM of our listed company. He was there and he ran the meeting. Obviously, he handed over some of the delegation to us, me and Anish. But we did conduct the meeting in a very fairly way. So going forward, there are 2 ways that can be done. Is that one was asset splitting. But asset splitting has become a bit of a kind of a situation where scale is what is appreciated by investors and bankers and lenders. So cutting down the scale should not be an option, or should not be the best option, I would say, for moving forward in families. There should be more corporatization, and the shares should be held by different members of the family, and the lead on the family should be compensated for their time and energy. And so this is how I would like to see. How it pans out in different families are different things. Some families would keep all the hotel assets in one and they take some other assets. So this splitting business of businesses is something that has to now become a thing of the past. It cannot be relied upon in the future. In a family office situation like that, because we are all becoming very, very specialized, I see a lot more talent coming in, which is professional, and they would be able to better serve the needs of the company and the job that's required rather than family members. So I see myself and my family relying more and more on professionals, and absolutely the family, younger generation will be at the helm of the stuff, of the affairs. But at the same time, you would see that a lot more induction of talent, even in corporate office, even in planning and stuff like that. This is an evolution that will carry on depending on the traditions of the families.
Okay. How would you approach, let's say, a view on asset monetization within a family? Is it a, and I know you sort of talked about the fact that there is no splitting, but is it a consensus? Is it a consensus with the first among equals deciding what is to be done? Is there a boss who finally takes the call? How does it work?
Well, let me start with asset monetization. I was probably one of the earliest guys to realize this. I brought in my operator, or my operator's owner, the Pittsburgh family, into our assets. And we were actually monetized part of it so that we could grow even further and to have a deeper involvement from them. So asset monetization is something that we are aware of. It can be monetized in two different ways. Once you have a listed company and you have shareholders, you have monetized part of it without letting go of the asset. So end of the day, it is going to be more, I see asset monetization will happen by consolidation of different people. In my own circumstances, I see more of an asset monetization by way of a fundraise on existing platforms rather than selling of assets. But I'm always open to it. I'm not really hard and fast against it. I've never been offered a price that would make me sell my asset. But Vijay, you are in the market. If there is somebody looking for a grand asset at a grand price, talk to me. Okay. I'm not in the market to sell, but maybe you can entice me.
Yeah, so we talked about valuation gap a few minutes ago, and I'm not sure where that valuation gap is going to ever lead to, but we'll see. What about your plans towards, let's say, new investments, expansions? How would you look at the next 5 years in terms of new projects?
Next 5 years, as far as I'm concerned and my own platforms are concerned, we are more interested in acquisition rather than going greenfield. Greenfield has become very painful. It takes 3 to 4 years minimum to develop even a simple, humble product. From the intent of when you buy the land or commit the land and then get your drawings approved and then build it and all that, it's a very, very painful process. And it is definitely not something that is cheap or inexpensive. I can see that our own growth is going to be through consolidation, acquisitions, brownfield, not greenfield, but brownfield and or operating assets. And we have set aside resources to do that. We have brought in people who will be looking exclusively at that side of it. I can even see that large portfolios merging together and becoming large listed companies. Stuff like that also is going to, and I'm looking at all of them.
Okay. So you're in the market for acquisition. You could be in the market for a partial sale or even a sort of a grand sale, whichever. So it's really business driven. It's really a business outlook driven.
Oh, absolutely. At this moment, if you ask me bluntly, Arun, are you selling any asset? The answer is very simple. But am I interested in fundraise? The answer is very simple, yes. So to do a fundraise, you have to dilute yourself and monetize certain part of your ownership, if not the asset itself.
And that gives you actually a platform to grow even more.
Yes, absolutely.
We've talked about hotels. Tell me about a little bit more about yourself. What drives you as a person? What drives you to come in and be a businessman, to be a hotelier, to be even a marathon runner, which I know you are or you were. I don't know whether you continue with that, but what drives you?
I like it because you have to be passionate about what you do. If you are not passionate and you are not liking it, you would not want to come into that. I show up work every day, literally even on an off day, I am itching to do some work. So it's not something that is forcing me to do it. I'm just loving it. I mean, secondly, it's my hobby more than I'm fortunate to be in hoteliering. So I can enjoy what I'm doing and I can experience what I'm doing without having to go elsewhere. I mean, I make my home in Mumbai in my own property. Actually. I love it.
Yeah, you can come down to work. You don't need transportation.
Yeah.
There's a question that I think you sort of touched on that, but it's a specific question, so I'm going to ask it to you. Would you ever create your own brand?
Unlikely. Unlikely, because the cost of building a brand would be much more than renting a brand. At this moment, to build a successful brand, I mean, if you talk about one successful brand, there are 100 plus failures. Okay.
Yes.
And if you are really trying to risk your own assets, which are huge, huge investments, 10,000 crore rupees of investments. I mean, you are not going to monkey around with your own brand. Why? If I could not, so my business is different. I'm not in a brand building kind of a business. Would you ask me that, do I want to be in that business? If I did have all these assets and I was interested and passionate about hoteliering, maybe I would come and build them because I can't build those assets or afford to build those assets. But certainly at this moment in my business cycle, I'm not really looking at it.
Yeah, and I think that sort of makes sense, because brand building would not sort of fit into the other philosophy that you talked about. Business-driven investments, return on investments being critical for you. As you said, brand carries a lot of risk in trying to create that, so it's consistent with that.
Actually, the brand will bring down your assets, Vijay. It has happened to many of our friends we know around in our own country, actually, where brand buildings have brought down the assets and the whole businesses.
Yes, yes, yes. I think I know what you're talking about. Okay, let's talk about manpower. We talked about the need to rationalize manpower and the costs, but are we getting staff that is really future ready? Or what should be done to make our people more future ready when they join us, and then as they continue working with us and have to sort of adjust to newer things in the industry?
I will answer this question slightly different.
Sure. You're the only.
Talent is plentiful. Okay. And many a times we are able to recruit talent. What we are not able to do, and most of us, all hotels, are in the same situation. We used to earlier complain about churn, about not able to retain talent. So you bring in talent, you cultivate, you grow it, but you are not able to retain it. And this was happening aggressively, if I remember, about 10 years back, when all the other service industries were coming in. The first place they would go and hunt for talent was hotels. We had smart people, we were thinking people, and airlines came here, call centers came here. Everybody who needed manpower in India needed hotels. And then on top of it, the shipping industry, the cruise liners and overseas. So we were losing our talent. So talent is not something that was a challenge of finding or grooming. It was retaining. And that will continue to be talent if we are going to recruit good people and train them properly. And we cannot, and we should not stop people if they are going to progress in their lives. Where I look at it is that when we are losing talent, why would the talent leave us and go to some other business? Either it's for money or it could be for environment. The hotel industry per se was almost which was considered almost a white collar employer, it is becoming a more of a gray and blue collar employer rather than white. So the talent is moving on to the white. So we have to bring the perception of white talent. I mean, white collar employer, of white collar people. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes,
I mean,
I
this
know.
is something that
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
that we are not a steel plant. We are not a a workshop or something. We are, in that soft industry, and we were losing, focus of that part. I think if the hotel industry as a whole starts behaving more like white collar employer opportunity, you will attract and retain more. This is how, generally I look at this moment.
I think you're very right in a way that we are a people's business, but our people were not getting the sort of the recognition of what they could and had to deliver, and they were becoming more like part of the system. So I guess that sort of became a bit of a challenge. Okay, we have coming to the end, but my last question to you: what are your three key mantras for success?
Focus.
Sorry?
Focus on your job, whatever you are doing. You have
Yeah.
to be focused on it. You have to be disciplined. And since we are disciplined means self-discipline. Focus on the agenda and the job ahead. And the third point is more important now, and it was always important, becoming more and more important, is empathy. Empathy towards our colleagues. Because we cannot succeed alone. We need to have a good team. And empathy towards our team, be able to address their concerns and still able to, be part of the family. So my company's enterprise is that we give you a family-like atmosphere. In times of trouble for you, we are there. We expect you to be there for us, for the company. So it's empathy, which is very, very important for anybody. Discipline, focus are important. And there are a lot of other stuff, but I would call myself that these three things I follow individually quite diligently.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, focus, discipline, and empathy. These sort of are so critical for success in business and for success of a people's business and for being a good owner. Absolutely. So with that, Arun, thank you so much. I think it's a good note to end on. Thank you so much. We could have continued talking, and I'm sure we will continue talking separately at some point, but thank you for your time. I hope everybody's enjoyed this, and there's a lot to learn as long as you don't start Expedia.com, Expedia.Saraf.
Vijay, thank you very much for having me. I enjoyed this conversation, and you were soft. You could be more punchy, though.
Okay, well, next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you.
Yeah, have a good day. Bye.